Okay, we're on.
Good afternoon, councillors, and welcome to the council meeting on Wednesday the 3rd of March 2021. And I'll just make an observation, we're at level 2, so we need to keep our distancing. Auckland's level 3. Just looking around the district, around the New Zealand, things are being cancelled. We've got the word cancellation. Well, I hope that word moves from cancellation to vaccination in the next wee while, so we can start moving on, get our lives back to as more normal than what we've had in the last year. So, call for apologies. Everyone's here. There's none. Extraordinary business. I know of none. And I'll just let you know that as we're back in level 2, the presentation of the Charter to the Air Cadets is being postponed again, and we won't meet any new staff at today's meeting either. But hopefully in 2 weeks' time, fingers crossed, we may get to do it then. Item number 3, declarations of interest. Any matters on the agenda today? And I'll give notice that I declared an interest in item 14 at the last council meeting, so that will stand. It's a non-pecuniary interest, and I'll be withdrawing from that item of discussion and debate, and the Deputy Mayor will take the chair for that item number 14. Moving over to the confirmation of the minutes. Item number 4, council minutes 17th of February 2021. Any alterations or additions on page 3? My page is lining up with your pages? Good. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. So I'd like to move that the true and accurate record, Councillor Millen, Councillor Cameron, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Angus.
I've made a note, but I may have the wrong minutes. Tankard water checked. Is that in those council meetings?
Yeah. It is on page 4. There was mid-year performance report number 10.
Yeah, what was the answer?
Yeah, I just had that highlighted myself. We were going to check whether tankard water is checked for compliance before being added to a water supply. Mr McKean, have you update there or not?
I'll have to get that for you. Sorry, I haven't got that. I'll let you know later.
Angus?
I only asked because it's in the minutes, and I presumed that the minutes are circulated, therefore the Chief Executive would have arranged an answer.
Yeah, because that came out of our questions at the mid-year performance report, so you'll find that answer and report back. Item number 5, Audit and Risk Committee, and we'll receive those minutes. Someone like to move that we receive them? Councillor Falloon, Councillor Brown. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Oh, when do we need to do that? Okay, right. Item number 6, Youth Council. Receive those minutes.
I'll move it, but Councillor Lovett and I were both in the meeting too, which doesn't seem to be recorded there.
Okay, they can be made correct at the next Youth Council meeting when they confirm their minutes. So Councillor Rawlinson moved, Councillor Brown second. All in favour, please say aye. Again, carried. And we have one item which I went past. The matter of review of the rates remission policy 2021 be uplifted as item number 7.
Move.
And a seconder. Councillor Wilson. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And that takes us right up to that item right now. Review of the rates remission policy 2021. And we have... Hang on. This is not Richard's report. Am I... This is item number 7. Yeah, review of the rates remission policy. Yep. Richard and Tony here. Richard, do you have something to say or clarifications or...
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The report, I think, is self-explanatory and stands on its own. There are a couple of tweaks to a couple of clauses in the policy which we think will help it work a little bit better, and I have copies of those if you'd like me to circulate them.
Okay, that would be fine, yep.
Tony is just circulating those now. I'm always reluctant to start to explain it while it's still being circulated because half of you don't know what I'm talking about and the other half you're trying to read it.
Okay, shall we just take a minute just to read what you've handed out? Okay, just want to give a brief explanation as well. Thanks, Richard.
Just briefly, and starting with the changes to clause 23. Obviously, when you have, when we've introduced an annual allowance, there are quarterly billing people for people who aren't on the annual allowance, and there's an annual billing period for people who are. And so putting in the word billing for meter reading simply enables the policy to work flexibly across both sets of consumers. Also have added in the sentence that the applicant is to provide evidence that the leak has been fixed. I think that was something I picked up in a policy that Mackenzie had, and it just seemed common sense, and generally it'll simply be the evidence that the consumption has gone back to normal. The deletion of the sentence about the billing period should be the meter reading period preceding the date of the application for emission, again with an annual allowance. And the idea behind the annual allowance is that people may use less in the winter and more in the summer, and you actually might identify the leak early in the year before you actually get your bill. So I sort of explored a variety of ways of rewording that and felt in the end it was easiest just to simply leave it out and recognise that officers will need to show some flexibility as they deal with these cases, and perhaps over a year or two we'll develop some principles that we can put into the policy if that's appropriate. So that was all about clause 23. Clause 28 is what I call the no backdating clause. And so you have a number of remissions where if someone does something positive with their property, for example, they put in a historic places covenant, if they do that during this year, the remission can only apply for future years. But with remission of excess charges, you're always dealing with a backdating situation because it's always occurred. So the wording just needed to be changed to reflect the practicalities of that, and that's what I've tried to do. So I'm saying that we don't backdate except for water by meter charges. Also saying that the period, it won't always be a quarter because some people are on annual allowance. That and also that the leakage could, in theory, span 2 separate rating years if it was picked up. The leak occurred in June, it might get discovered in July, so that council can remit excess charges over 2 years, but in no case more than 12 months. So it's trying to, again, enable the policy to apply in a slightly more flexible way to recognise the two different groups of consumers.
Thanks, Richard. Questions before we go into the recommendation? Councillor Flynn?
So basically, what you're saying with the changes to clause 23 and 28 just makes the policy a lot easier to work from officers' point of view, because the previous, particularly clause 28, was a little bit black and white type of thing and really didn't have relevance, particularly as far as the water metering was concerned.
Yes, I think it's a fair comment.
Councillor Wilson?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I've got two questions. When does this policy apply from?
It applies from the 1st of July 2021.
It's going out for consultation first, so it's got a process
Yes, it
to go
is.
through.
So today we are adopting a draft for consultation. It will apply from 1 July 2021.
Because why I asked, the Hines Reserve Board and the Hines Community Centre are in the process of applying to council. So we'll have to get it in before the 1st of July, otherwise we'll be excluded, obviously, because you can't backdate.
The
Water will be. Just Richard?
the policy as it currently stands for halls and community boards, the no backdating still applies, so they should be putting the application in now. So that it hasn't changed as far as halls and community boards are concerned.
This is a historic.
Angus, if you just go off and then still come on.
This is a historic water leak with the Hines Reserve Board. We had an agreement with Mr Guthrie that once we fix the leak, we come back to council and negotiate. So we'll have to get ourselves into gear and get it done before the end of June.
Correct.
Angus?
I've got a question, but first of all, I would like to say why I'm asking the question, if I may. I'm asking the question because this council has become quite modern recently. We only seem to deal in emails to people. Gone, I think, is the days of cheque booking. So presumably gone are also the days of envelopes and stamps. So in paragraph 30, my question is, why our applications for remission of rates must be made only in writing, not on an online form or over the phone or presumably email?
Well, it does say...
No, so it's either in writing via online or over the phone.
Three options. Just push a button again, Angus.
No, that's it.
Who's on?
You can either do it in writing. So we've taken some out and put some in. Okay, I got it. It's a puzzle.
You want to use that? Good. Councillor Lovett, if it's not a question, or we can move into the recommendation unless it's a question.
I just had a question around the memorial halls. They're considered non-rateable land. There's no formula or anything in there about businesses who operate at memorial halls. What the situation is there, you know, the clarity. Are they still non-rateable or, yeah, just a question.
That is a question I would probably turn to my colleague Mr Brake if he could answer off the cuff. My familiarity with that part of the Rating Act is not as sharp as it once was.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, my understanding is if the Memorial Hall is the ratepayer, then the rating is per the Memorial Hall, whether they've got businesses in there or not.
Okay, if someone would like to move the recommendation.
Just got a question. Sorry, through the chair. So did domain boards come under this as well? They're included in.
Reserve land doesn't pay rates, as I understand it.
No, but they do have quite a few water links, don't they? Domains.
But they get services, but they don't pay
Yeah.
the rates. Yeah. Councillor Cameron,
I was just going to move that.
with the recommendation.
Yeah,
Right.
move the recommendation.
Second it. Councillor Brown,
Yes.
open for discussion. Debate. Angus?
Question, is clause 13 in or out on our minutes, on our tablets?
13 is in.
Okay, thank you.
Anything that's out has got lines through it?
Anything in, it's got
Well, everything that's yellow or black is in, except anything with a line through it is out. Yep. And you removed the recommendation, Carolyn, including the added suggestions on that other bit of paper. Yep. Any further debate? If not, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Good. So that rates remission policy will go out for consultation. Item number 8, community engagement policy, which was called the significance and engagement policy. So we've had a slight change, which probably makes it clearer. Yep. Any questions? Mel, you're going to take us through it. Nothing further to add to your report, it's all there.
Nothing further to add, thank you.
Any questions, councillors? No, and if someone would like to move, Councillor Mackay.
Still finding it, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, on
Page-
page 21,
Yeah. So,
you had a question?
are we allowed to discuss anything below that in this item?
Yep, you got a question on it? Then we can
Yeah,
go into
I have got a
debate.
question. I think my question is on page 40 on the tablet. And it lists, yes, it lists the Schedule 1 strategic assets. Question. Why is stock water not a strategic asset in this table?
Perhaps an oversight?
No, it wasn't an oversight. I'm not sure I'm the best person to explain the reasoning, but we presented a number of options to the leadership team, the executive team, regarding the strategic assets. And I know in the past there's been issues where we were trying to deal with closures of some stockwater races, and we fell foul of we were worried that we would fall foul of our significance and engagement policy. And so I believe that when the executive team gave us their feedback about the list of strategic assets, they did not include the stock water network for that reason.
Your supplementary question, Councillor Lovett will have to, they all have to go off and then come back on again. You'll wait, okay. Councillor Cameron?
I don't. I sort of have a question. Are we reducing then the criteria from 11 to 7? Is that correct?
11 to 7 what?
Yes, we're reducing it to
Right.
7 criteria.
Do
just
you
'cause
think-
it's condensed?
Presumably we're doing it because it's burdensome to administer the 11 and time consuming. Is there a danger that it will lose its sensitivity and that things will be a low priority when in reality perhaps they do need a little bit of extra scrutiny? Like it's quite a crude, like we've got 7 criteria, 4 or more it's high, otherwise it's low, and if there's nothing decisive it's medium. Like it's it's not a very precise tool. Like it's open to interpretation. I just wonder if things are low and they, perhaps, revisiting, they may need not to be low.
I can answer that question, but I'll always defer to the Chief Executive if he'd prefer.
I was just pointing out that in fact there's been criteria combined. So while 11 has gone to 7, those we've merged criteria into one. So yes, there's less criteria, but we're still taking into account the same range of issues.
I see that.
Yeah.
But you've gone from 1 then to a half. So either way, my question still stands. It's still, you've still lost 4, you've still only got 7 criteria, and it is merged and combined. But
Yes.
then it's worth a half as opposed to a whole.
Yes, but equally the policy is no longer quite as formulaic.
No.
So it now has the sensitivity, kind of the smell test at the end, which enables an answer to be not driven solely on which box you're ticking individual criteria. So we would actually say that that ability to sense the significance of an issue is enhanced by this policy change as opposed to diminished.
For the officers.
Yeah, because we're the ones recommending
That's right.
the status of the significance of the issue. So it allows us to actually take a step back and to consider the matter in its entirety, as opposed to just X number of boxes are ticked, therefore it is this.
Another question, Councillor Mackay?
No.
Oh, we're ready for...
Yep.
You'd like to move?
I will move. I will move the recommendation that Council adopts the draft Community Engagement Policy 2021 for consultation.
And seconded, Councillor Lovett. Open for debate. Councillor Mackay.
Maybe I should say something, seeing
Yes.
I asked a question before. I'm actually wrapped and over the moon that, again, staff have seen the light on certain issues, and I congratulate them for the wording that's not in this policy, and I look forward to having debates on those issues one by one as they come forward later in council life. I urge people to vote for the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay. Councillor Falloon.
Yeah, just a comment. Last century we would call this common sense. But since the year 2000 we seem to have to codify everything so that no one has any choice in what they do or how they do it. But looking at this policy, to me it appears to be pragmatic, useful, and it gives something for council officers that they can hang their coats on. So I support the motion.
Thank you. Any further speakers for or against the motion? If not, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Against. Carried. Thank you. Item number 9, Canterbury Regional Land Transport Plan 2021 to 31 submission. And Tony, any questions, clarifications for Tony? Submission. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the actual submission that you've signed, I can't find the word freight. Is there a reason for that?
Where do you think it should? Do you think it should be somewhere, the word freight?
Well, I was going to move an amendment if anyone moves the recommendation, so maybe I can go for it.
What
The
do we
amendment was
look
going
at
to be
the-
that along the lines that you could word something for freight.
Rather than moving an amendment on it, perhaps if we go through the submission where you think you needs to add in, and we might just agree with that. Because I have a couple of comments.
Because one of the reasons for a 4-lane highway is, I thought, to keep away from those damn trucks if you're in a small car, or to be able to pass them. So it's in the actual submission. I just can't see that freight would benefit. Otherwise, the submission is very good. I'm actually looking at the actual submission, and I can't see the word freight. And see, instead of supports the 4-lane highway to develop between Rolleston and Tynwald, including 4-lane bridge. That's all very good. But we talk about the population is growing in the opening paragraphs. But I thought the main reason for a 4-lane highway was safety, especially small vehicles and trucks on a 2-lane highway. It would leave more room for vehicles to move, etc., etc. And as we are a fast, still a growing region, have lots of freight, and we're within the distance, recognised distance of a port, we actually have to put most things on the truck to be efficient, especially to get to Rolleston, where the ports are. So I just thought I was going to leave the wording to be done by the scribes, but I was just wondering why freight isn't in the actual submission.
Okay, Tony, any comment? Or?
Through the chair, happy to add in some phraseology around freight, if you'd like, in and around perhaps point 8 and point 9. I could have a rejig of those 2 points if you'd like.
Just me following on from that same paragraph number 9 that Angus was in, talk about the 4-lane bridge over the Ashburton River, and I think you should add the Rakai and the Selwyn. That was okay. Stole your thunder, Diane. Lynette. That's right. Carolyn?
I've also read the submission and overall it's fine. I wonder if it lacks a little bit of impact and to sort of support Angus's position. I think we need to emphasise this, that we don't want it because we want it. We want it because it's going to save people's lives and promote the movement of goods and services between Christchurch and Ashburton, which is becoming more and more like a busy highway. And I think the freight is particularly pertinent given that those curtain siders are getting longer and longer. So I think we do need to highlight the aspect of the safety, I think, and that's rather than more important than anything else.
Yeah, good suggestion. Councillor Lovett. Abraham, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. A four-lane bridge over the Ashburton River or a second bridge? That's to me, is two different ways of doing it. We've been pushing the second bridge all the way through up till now, so are we going to change to a four-lane bridge?
That's got another key point.
No, we're not. And if you remember the four-lane, the second Ashburton Urban Bridge is in the plan for 25-26. This is not in a plan at all. So when this, if it goes into the plan, hopefully it does, and then it starts getting planned, well, there'll be a four-lane bridge over the Ashburton River somewhere, somehow. We're not the planners, we're just suggesting. May make the cut, it may not. Councillor Lovett?
The other thing I was looking at here is we've got in here in number 8, it's it's a key route for local economy. Well, it is a bottleneck for the whole South Island economy, whether we want to elaborate just a little bit more on that, because it is a standstill.
Well, you are correct, because to get further south, you either have to go over the Rakaia River at one of two places.
Yes, so whether we can
just expand on that a
little bit. It's a local and the southern economy.
Good idea.
Something around there.
We could add something like that in. Councillor Rawlinson?
Yeah, I agree with all that's been said, and particularly mentioning the other two bridges. And yeah, I just felt when I read it, it was what I would have, my terms to myself, where it's a bit softly. I'd like to just see it with a bit more energy in it.
A bit more punch?
Yep, thank you.
Yep. Councillor Cameron?
Can we put an appendices? Can we add appendices to our submissions? Is that possible?
Through the chair, we can do whatever we like.
Because we had that really good bridge report a wee while ago showing the traffic going over the bridge, and that would be quite impactful because it was like Auckland Harbour Bridge numbers of cars going over at particular periods of time. And through Tynwald, like I've taken a photograph of Tynwald traffic on, when was it, Sunday afternoon. It was nose to tail coming all the way. Like if we can add appendices, if that's correct.
We could probably add a little bit more than that. You've got the Ashburton Bridge, and also there's counters on the Rakaia Bridge, so we could see what number of vehicles are coming into our district.
And if we're going to do it, we may as well,
add some information to support.
because that's quite impactful, that the numbers going over the bridge. I was amazed when I saw the numbers.
Yeah. So we could gather that information and put it in, or appendix it one way or the other. Yeah. I just had a couple of things perhaps to add. There's no mention in the submission about the money they give us for the general maintenance, which is in the plan, but we should, I'm thinking, just add in, thank you very much for what we're getting. We agree with you. Or we'd also always like more, but just acknowledge what they've got in the plan for our maintenance as well. And somewhere in the plan, if you've read the plan or seen it, it just focuses on 3 years, yet it's a 10-year plan. And there's very, very little detail in there. There's no detail in there on what's happening from years 3 to 10 for those 7 years that I'm aware of. So we might like to note that it could have a little bit more detail in. Or it hasn't got it now, but when the final plan comes out, that it does have the other 7 years in a little bit more detail than what it is now, which wouldn't be hard. That's all the comments I had. Councillor Mackay.
Can I move?
You certainly can.
I move the recommendation 1, 1.1 and 1.2. Including all amendments
additions,
and suggestions and appendices. I actually think we've now got it bang on. We originally thought it was well written, but I think we've enhanced it because we are now talking about safety, and safety is the main consideration that NZTA think they're going to do by putting a cheese cutter in the middle of the road and having cars and tractors on the same side of that cheese cutter. So, well done. Let's be safe. Let's look after constituents, not only in Ashburton but in Canterbury and New Zealand.
Councillor Cameron,
I'd like to second that, please.
open for debate. Just before I put the motion, if it's agreeable, the changes that this is due on Friday, so with the changes that you're going to put in, which are not great, so it won't take long, does councillors want that emailed out to them just to check?
Yes, please.
Yes? Some yes, some no, but just flick around the changes you've got.
Yep, sure thing.
I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Elderly persons housing, item number 10. Page 50. Welcome, Colin. Reasonably lengthy 17A report there, but very detailed, very self-explanatory. Are there any questions of Colin or Zane? Councillor Lovett?
The first thing I want to know, do we have to call it elderly persons housing? Otherwise, some of us here fall into that category of elderly, and I'm just wondering, is there better words reflected, whether it's it's senior housing or pensioner housing? Does it have to have that stigma of elderly?
Some of us here are pensioners too.
Have you a suggestion for a different type of name for it?
Well, that's special.
Senior? Others do?
That's just one of the words.
It's just, whether it could be senior or...
Caroline, if you just go off and then Lynette will come back on. Lynette, you're on.
I was just wondering whether it could be something nicer like senior housing or pensioner housing. This word elderly, it's just like decrepit old people bent over on sticks to me. And in this modern world, 65 isn't elderly.
You could use third age. That's the new term now, isn't it? Third age.
Okay. If you'd like to change the name, would someone have a resolution that they would like to change the name or leave it as it is? Nothing. Caroline, you're not indicating a change of name?
No. Quite the contrary. Yeah.
No, there's no will to change. No, as is.
And I was
Councillor
only going to
Cameron,
remark on that, if I may, in that I think it's important that we don't make it Ashburton housing, because we only want people in their third age to be occupying it. It's intended for older people. So I'd like to have the name representative of what it is, so there's no confusion as to who can stay there.
Well, yeah, it's just a play with words, I think. But
Yeah,
we know what
my
it is.
question was,
Brian?
am I correct that it used to be called pensioner housing a long time ago? It wasn't.
Phillips,
Okay.
it's always been elderly persons housing.
Yeah, because I think it defines that it is for pensioners and over. I think I don't agree with wanting to change it.
Just on the eligibility criteria, Colin, has it been updated lately, or the criteria to go into one of these? I don't think the criteria is in this report, is it? Or it was in there, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it is stated in the report.
So who updates that criteria, or is it part of what we're doing now?
We would come back to council with a recommendation as these are the criteria for the persons that we want to have in those units.
Yeah.
And it's contained within the actual policy itself, so that's going to be reviewed in
Following council's decision today.
following this decision.
Okay. Lane.
I don't have any questions. I'm quite happy to move the
I think
motion.
we're
if
still
we
in
can
the
hear.
questions of the
Yep.
report at this stage, I think. Yeah. John, questions?
Yeah, are we just discussing the recommendations here, or is the whole report open for discussion?
The report's open for discussion as well. It's item 1 and 2 in the recommendation. And 3, there's 3, yeah. That's
Thanks, through the chair. So reading about the accommodation supplement, so is council in a position to act on behalf of the people that are renting the units, to speak with MSD to just help with that accommodation supplement application, or is that something that they do on their own? I mean, it's a key factor to the increase, and I just think if we can make it easy for the tenants, then it would be great.
Yes, you're correct. We've established with MSD, obviously, the eligibility criteria that needs to be met. Our officers are more than happy to assist where necessary, but at the end of the day, it is the tenant who makes the application to MSD.
Councillor Rawlinson.
Thank you. Liz sort of stole my question, but I thought it was an excellent document to read, and my main takeaway from this is that we must keep it as senior elderly housing and not open it up to social housing. I think that's where it would totally lose its impact and to not be the unique thing that it is. So, good report.
Just reading the report and seeing short on, if someone's been in a unit for a long time, in 20 plus years, and their unit needs refurbishing, you don't generally refurbish the unit until they leave. Yet, in our homes, we wouldn't do that. We would keep refreshing them. So, and after 20 odd years or more, the units do need refreshing. Can you move them somewhere to another unit that's been refreshed? They get the opportunity to stay there or move back when their one has been refurbished. Because I don't think that option's in there at the moment. I don't think.
That's the way that we manage our property. So what we've been doing more recently is, yes, we've been discussing with the tenants how they want this addressed. Some of them don't want to move. Some of them don't want their units done up. So if they are willing to either relocate or in one of our other units, or even go and stay with somewhere else for a few weeks, then we are more than happy to do their units up.
And if
so
if they wanted to do that, they'll just apply. Send a letter in and ask.
Yes, that's correct.
Cool. That's good. Carol?
Hi, just following from Liz. The Citizens Advice Bureau also have a relationship to help with the WINS or whomever to help fill the forms, and they come over. So you could even, if your officers weren't able to do it or didn't have the time, you could recommend they do go to Citizens Advice Bureau.
Yes, that's correct. We've already had discussions with the Citizens Advice, and they're more than willing to assist us.
See, and there you've got a plan for new units. If a section needed new units on, good little plan. What's the approximate cost of a unit like that?
Around 3,000 a square, so a 52 square metre unit equated to about 155k complete.
Yep. John?
Thank you. To me, it comes down to two simple options as far as the elderly person's housing is concerned. One, we can carry on doing it ourselves as per option 2, which has got a lot going for it, in that we can pick the people who go into our elderly persons' villages as such type of thing. Whereas if we looked at it economically, we would be better to sell it to a CHP or community housing provider, because they have access to funds that we do not. They have access to funds for building. They also have access to the rental subsidies, which we don't have. But the problem with that is that you're never going to know who your neighbour's going to be and for how long, because basically you'll become a social housing provider. At the moment, we've got a very narrow focus in that they're only over 65, and generally a lot of them know each other, so it becomes like a friendly little community. Whereas if you go to a CHP, we're going to lose that, and you just don't know what or whom you're going to get. So at some stage, to me, council have to decide whether they're going to be in or out. It's interesting to watch what other councils are doing, particularly what Nelson has done, where they've gone through one option, didn't work, so they've now gone and they've sold the whole lot. We still have time, if we take up the option 2, we still have the time to decide what we want to do with our elderly persons' housing. So I thank the authors for what I term as a very good report. But the question I have is that we did a 17A report in 2017. One of the issues that does not seem to have been looked at that stage was the financial sustainability. This report has looked at the financial sustainability, and because the last council did not look at the financial sustainability, is that the reason why we've ended up in the situation where we've got now, where rates are having to be used to subsidise the elderly person's housing.
Okay, so you get a correct statement to start with, which I'll take as you're moving it, and that was the mover's statement, and then you had a question after that. Once I get a seconder, I'll get a reply to your question.
I'll second it.
It's Councillor Cameron seconded. They're open for debate. The question answered. Oh, you?
I was.
Oh, I didn't know that.
A long time ago, you said stop.
What, a long time ago?
To do that, we will more questions. So, I'm quite happy to do that.
The question, well, John's now moved, sorry about that. And we have a seconder who was Carolyn.
Hang on, I'll withdraw it if Lane
Okay.
wants to do that.
Okay, Lane's the mover. Lane moved. Put your light on if you want to move it.
No, this question, yeah.
No. Turn your light off, Stuart. Lane moved.
I will move this report and the motion as it stands. Been involved with the team last week presenting it to the elders, and it was really appreciated by all the people who were there. It was an amazing meeting. We thought it was going to be quite tough. We had people clapping on the end of the meeting. That's how happy they were. So it might not be the best option for this council financial, but I think it's the best option for the people in this district, and that's the reason I'm moving this, and more than happy with it. And I'd like to thank the team for all the hard work they did. Thank you.
Colin, have you got answer to John's question around the last 17A that was review that was done, why financial wasn't looked at? Or was someone?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think we'd have to actually go back and review the 17A to ensure that that comment is correct. I don't know whether that's true or not. I heard Councillor Fillion's comment, but I wouldn't like to comment on it without going back through the old 17A and agreeing or not. It may be true, but it may not. So I don't know the answer.
Right, thank you. We shall have a look. Stuart.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. No, I think we've made the right decision. However, I've got a question on page 58. When you look at those figures, reserve balance climbs, we're putting rates in. Are we borrowing to fill the gap as well as the rates? How come our loan is 1.1 million? It doesn't decrease at the finish when we're actually making a profit. Are we going to continue to build up reserves and continue to build up the loan? Can somebody explain to me how the two, once they start, income exceeds expenses, should not the loan balance reduce rather than climb?
So this is a three-prong approach, really. One is that income will come from the tenants. Some income will come from the ratepayers for approximately 3 years, which equates to about 118,000. And then that will cease. And then the third tranche to that is money from borrowings. So we'll continue to borrow it until such point as our reserves build up, and then it's really up to the council to make a decision as to what they do with that money there. Do they pay back the borrowings, or do they go and build more units? So that's a decision really to be made once it reaches that trigger point, which you can see on page 58, which is around 2027, 2028.
Supplementary. Yep. Why, if you've got 600,000 or 700,000 reserves, do you continue to borrow? Interest rates might be 10% then. I mean, to me, once you get a good reserve, we're still going to be adding to the reserve because income's exceeding expenses. Why keep borrowing?
Through Mr. Mayor, this is a fairly simplistic look at this. What we generally do is to talk about net debt, which means you're borrowing less your cash. So the net debt is the same. We will look, though, when we get there, as to whether there is a case for paying the debt off rather than borrowing. Normally, we wouldn't borrow if there's enough money generated or in the reserve to pay for what you need. So we could go back and modify those figures and remove the surplus and reduce the borrowings. But when we get there, that's exactly what we'll probably do. But at the moment, it's a lot easier to model it without making those decisions now.
Councillor Flynn?
Just a further question. When we talk about financial sustainability, some of which won't be sustainable for another 7 years type of thing, are we meaning that it's sustainable to the extent that it will cover the overheads that the EPH team have to wear?
Yes, we count overheads as the part of the cost of running this activity.
Councillor Wilson?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I will add that I think this is a very good use of some ratepayers' funds under the circumstances. Some of the social spending we do is doubtful to me, but this is one case that I fully agree with.
Councillor Rawlinson?
Thank you. Just a question probably for Colin. So if we adopt this, does it then mean that if we wish to take in a partner, for instance, the same as what's happened down at Mona Square, this won't preclude us from doing that if that opportunity arises again?
We would have to come back with a further report and then get some guidance from the council as to that. But no, it doesn't preclude it in the future. This lends itself to making a further decision at some other date.
Yeah, because I would hate to think we're stopping ourselves or preventing ourselves from taking up another opportunity like that. Thank you.
Councillor Mackay?
Mr. Mayor and councillors, I'm going to come to the aid of Councillor Falloon, hopefully. On page 52, in item 6, previous council decisions, the recommendation was that council continue affordable accommodation with the elderly. It also went on, independent and suitably qualified professional advice of a rigorous assessment of the condition of units, particularly concerning council's responsibility under new law changes residential tendency. B, consult with the community, interested stakeholders and preferred options. C, is most important, review the elderly person's housing policy, including the rental charging scheme and eligibility criteria. That even leads me to believe that Councillor Falloon is on the right track when he leads about sustainability of price of the rents, etc., etc. So yes, I'll be interested to hear what the staff report back, but the way the report is written, to me and Councillor Falloon, it reads as if the 2017 report didn't cover a lot of those things which we have covered in 2021 and are forced to arrive at this situation. I agree with the recommendation of we voting for it because I think it should be discussed by the community, but I did want to come to Councillor Falloon's aid on that one.
Any further speakers for or against the motion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Next, item number 11. Ashburton Library and Civic Centre PCG Terms of Reference. Page 122. Any there near?
Just while people are looking it up, through Mr.
Questions?
Mayor, this is to reflect the proposal to include the Bearing Square redevelopment into the work of the PCG in order to improve the chances of a coordinated approach to both pieces of closely related work.
So I'd like to move. Councillor Mackay, Councillor McMillan.
Question, if I may.
Okay.
If the staff recommendation or the Library and Civic Centre Project Control Group recommendation is for us to go down this track, will they also be responsible for the potholes around the side roads, e.g. Havelock Street, East Street and Cameron Street? Because this, if we take, I'm just asking, will they be responsible for that in the future?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the intention here is the redevelopment of Bearing Square East to be better coordinated with the development of the library and civic centre, as opposed to maintenance issues that arise from time to time. The PCG is not intended to be responsible for those issues.
Oh, thank you for the answer. I'll make comment when comment is.
Councillor McMillan.
I'll move if there's no other questions.
Councillor McMillan moved. Councillor Lovett seconded.
I'll second that, and I think it's vital that they both work in together to keep the momentum going, and I'd hate to see one building finished and a park not finished. They have to work in unison. So I'll second that.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
Well, I'm trying to make up my mind whether I'm going to vote for this or not. At the moment I'm not going to, because I think this is the project group actually expanding its powers, and that's why I asked my question about the potholes in the roads. To me, the boundaries actually become connected, and as they expand their boundaries of what they do, it could become more and more connected. And yes, they're doing a good job, but the danger is they could actually become council. So on all aspects, if they expand what's on their boundary all the time, I actually think this is a council job and should be in the hands of council.
Councillor Cameron.
I am also having that same dilemma or same concern, is that I understood the PCG committee was put in place to make sure that things were kept on track and that there was no problems, and people were giving a very close look at all the decisions surrounding the new civic building, because it's a big build. This, I feel, is a different deal, if you like, and I understand that synergies need to be maximised and that they are going along together, but I think this is not a building, this is a square, a public place, I mean, as the building is as well, and I think it shouldn't necessarily be under the same umbrella. And I understand everything comes to council as well, and I think that's important, and I'm sort of unsure at the moment as to why it needs to be under the PCG group. I suppose that's where I stand. Why is it necessary to be under the PCG group?
I think Councillor Lovett said it before, was to combine the two so that they sympathise with each other. You can shortly. Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to say, we do have plans for the square going forward, and this building is expanding into the square, am I right? And all that, the path and everything out the front of it is the extension of this building. So naturally, in my mind, it should be part of this, of the project, to make sure the synergies, everything works together. That's right, isn't it? Yeah.
I think so.
Through Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure it's expanding into the square. The boundaries of the building are very defined, but the way people will access and use both the square and the library, in particular on the ground floor, will have a lot of synergies and connections. So it was more to the idea is to coordinate the connections through the development, and I would expect that the PCG will be disbanded once the building is opened and the square has been redeveloped. So there is no ongoing role for the PCG in that part of our district once the redevelopment work and the build work has completed.
And the PCG will report back to the council, as it does now, with its expanded scope to look after Bering Square East if this is passed. Councillor Latham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think number 4 in the report on page 123 sums it up very succinctly. The functions and responsibilities will remain the same. The PCG will be responsible for monitoring the strategic direction of both projects and will ensure that the BSE upgrade is aligned with the library and civic centre project. I can see no problems with combining these.
Councillor Cameron.
I think will Bering Square East be under the jurisdiction of open spaces once it's up and going? Presumably.
Presumably, but the road will still be under the jurisdiction of infrastructure services.
That's
so there's
right.
various parts to this whole building, and we've already seen the desire to coordinate the building with the square with the CBD work, for example, down Havelock Street, and timing all of that to make sure that they complement each other and we don't finish one bit and then have to rip it up to do another project. So it's a coordination issue as opposed to anything else.
I accept that, and there is a portion of that, absolutely. But I think the two things are two different things. I mean, of course, people go to them, but one's a park where people will sit and have their lunch and access the civic building and the library, and one's a building. I also think we currently have out, a year ago, we asked for a pre-scoping report on the plaques or the historical aspect of our town. I think that's still got to be considered, and I think that needs to come to council rather than go straight to the PCG with a recommendation. And I'd hate to think an opportunity lost with regards to that. And that's probably one of my concerns. I mean, I just wonder if it's necessary.
Through Mr. Mayor, just to answer the specific point, the pre-scoping report on the historic acknowledgement is to come to council and is not tagged specifically as part of the redevelopment of Bering Square, nor as a part of the work of the PCG. So we can give you the comfort that that work will come to council. And just make the point while I've got my light on, Mr. Mayor, that both designs of the Library and Civic Centre and the design of Bering Square East have come to full council for approval. So what we're talking about here is coordinating the project work. There's no usurping of council's role in terms of design or concepts or how it's to look. It's simply coordinating the work to ensure it's done as seamlessly as possible.
Councillor Bryan.
Yeah, Hamish basically said it. We've all been part of the workshops regarding the building or the park, so there is nothing going to be what we don't know. So it's just getting the thing going forward. I can't see any problem. It's council who signs all things off.
Councillor McMillan, right to reply if needed. I'm going to put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? 1, 2, 3. Against? Want that recorded? Councillor Mackay.
Recorded against, please.
Okay. Councillor Cameron against. Councillor Wilson against. Passed. Okay. Next item. Item number 12, the Mayor's report. Item number 3 there, the year squadron, not today. And item number 4, rural provincial, which was supposedly on Thursday and Friday of this week, is now a Friday Zoom meeting. So that's update there. The mayoral calendar. Any questions? Councillor Cameron.
The Reserve Bank of New Zealand Governor meeting what was the key messages from that? Anything that would affect local government?
Yes, if you wanted to wait 2 weeks, there'll be
Okay.
a report in the
Oh,
next
right.
mayor's report. Yeah, but it was a good, yeah, it was very enlightening. Councillor Mackay?
Yes, my question is, Mr Mayor, can I, along with the other councillors there, please thank you for the way in which you imparted the information in a calm, sensible manner to the residents of Methven at that meeting. The ones that I was sitting alongside, that were all around me, were actually quite pleased to hear the message, understood it, may not liked it, but understood it. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks for that. And we will be going back to Methven as part of the long-term plan consultation process. So they'll get another go at for clarification as well. If nothing, I'll move the mayor's report. We receive it.
I'll second.
Councillor McMillan. Nothing further. I'll put the recommendation on in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Well, that takes us, financial variance report. I'll give you a little minute to pull that up on your screens. And that is the period ending 31st January 2021. Page by page, 3, 4. Yep. 5 and 6. Stuart.
Just if you go back to page 5, the explanation for roading and footpaths not being spent, I see it's possible for the CBD, but surely we've got loan money, do we not spend it, and especially subsidised money, and then we use the next year's subsidised money to continue on with the job. We seem to put money in a little pocket and we don't use it in the year to say we're going to use it next year. Why don't we use it when we've got it, to spend it on the road that needs doing in the year that we've got the money? In the next year, the money will be there available for the next project. If you get what I mean? We seem to be putting expenditure off.
That's correct. That is just because we were unsure of any variations that would come through from CBD, but now, as in the next month, we can certainly look at doing what you suggest. We were just holding that money just in case there were other variations coming through from the CBD work.
Councillor Wilson, let's do it.
Oh,
sorry. Page 6, 7. 8 and 9. Okay. Are you all up to page 10? Gotcha. 11. Genghis.
Stockwater. Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question is, and it relates to the construction of fish screens on the 4 Stockwater takes. My understanding was that when we went through the long-term plan, it was, these fish screens were there as a capex, and we took them out. Hopefully finance can be told of that, because I actually wrote to finance and asked if they were definitely out, and I got a reply that they were never in. So I can remember reading them on a capex sheet somewhere. So will that bring forward the closure of Stockwater races on 2 counts? One, that we can't fish screen and meet the requirements of our consent, and on the second one is that they're no longer significant in council's view.
Through Mr Mayor, this more refers to the fact that where an alternative way of meeting the consent requirements that doesn't require the expensive fish screens to be built is being explored. So it doesn't mean that this particular work will or won't enhance fish screen closure, stock water closure. We're trying to avoid this expenditure if at all possible. Secondly, this is in this year's budget as opposed to reference to the long-term plan, which of course starts on the 1st of July. And thirdly, I think the comment here to really note is if these fish screens ultimately prove necessary to build, the budget provision is inadequate. So all those factors are weaving together to show or explain why we aren't currently spending this money. That's the explanation for the variance, if you like.
Thank you for your answer, Mr. Chief Executive. I'm really intrigued because I've been told over the years that fish barriers do not work. So what other forms of stopping the fish getting in? Can you elaborate, please? What are they? Because we've been told over the years that fish barriers don't work by this council.
One example is that if we can rely on the RDR's fish screen, we don't have to build separate ones at the intakes, for example.
Okay, thank you.
And the RDR's fish screen is under construction. Councillor Wilson?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Lee, talking to some of the people that should know about fish screens, there may be a slight softening with ECAN regarding fish screen requirements on takes like the Ashburton River or something, that if they can be proved that they're actually advantageous to fish having access to spawning areas rather than it seems illogical to keep them out. Whereas if you let them in some of these, if we are going to have permanent water races, it could be an advantage for the fish to have access to these permanent water races. So I know ECAN in the past have pushed for it, but they seem to be just softening just a little bit, I think, at the moment, hopefully.
For biodiversity values. Well, if you put a fish screen on them, then you won't have any biodiversity in the water race, will you? No fish. Yep. Understand what you're saying. Page 11. No, we've done 11. 12. John.
Yeah, just coming back, CEO made the comment that when the RDR screen goes in, that the stock water won't need fish screens. But my understanding would be that the RDR is right at the top of the river and the stock water schemes are going to be this side. Is that not correct?
Yes, I was using it as an example of the possible mechanism to explore. So if it does away with the intake altogether, because you can access the water from somewhere else that is already fish screened, that might do away with the need for a separate fish screen. But I'm not disputing the geography, nor am I saying it's a given that that'll happen. And in fact, if you look at the comment on the stockwater page, it's referring to the fact that if they're ultimately required, which they may be, then the budget's inadequate, but that implies that indeed they might be required. But we're exploring all options to see whether we can avoid putting them in by looking at options around the intakes. That may involve water from the RDR, which hopefully is already fish screened, as an example to Councillor Mackay's question.
Councillor Mackay?
Supplementary questions. What present intakes are below the RDR?
What, sorry? What was the question?
What present intakes from the Ashburton River system are below the RDR? What intakes, what river takes are below the RDR?
For stock water.
For stock water.
No idea. Don't think there is any.
Thank you. I think that might rule out the RDR, but I'll let the Chief Executive keep debate.
13. 14.
Can I just ask a question on the vandalism? So there's a budget of 17 and the report's at 48.
Which page are you on?
Oh, well, it's the reason for variance on page 16. Sorry.
Right.
Well,
Page
not
16.
really, because it's the reason. Anyway. So what insurance claim would we get? Is that for the public conveniences? And there's obviously been more damage done to those toilets in the domain that were burnt last year.
Yeah, I
Is
think
that
they
correct?
re-damaged, have they? Steve?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we budget for so much in the way of vandalism. This year has been abnormal for the amount that we've had. So we budget a certain amount, but it's been far higher. Hopefully it's a one-off blimp, but what we are doing is trying to claim as much back as insurance as we can. So we're in that process now.
Just on that same page, the toilet cleaning is way over budget.
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the reasons for that, there's two main reasons. Of course, COVID earlier on in this financial year meant we had to do additional cleans to keep up with the levels of COVID-19. And secondly, we have started to do cleaning in the Methven public toilets that previously weren't being cleaned on the weekends, and that was causing some issues. So we're trying to work with existing budgets to see if we can get some savings to offset that, but it's looking like it's going to be difficult, especially with that COVID at the beginning of the financial year.
Okay, Councillor Cameron.
Just a quick question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Steve. How many public conveniences are being cleaned? Like 25? A ballpark there for the 71,000 or 32,000 4-year budget. Is that that's not every public toilet in the county?
What do you think, getting new jobs
Sorry. Through the chair again. Sorry, I couldn't answer off the top of my head how many public toilets we have, but they are all cleaned by us. And the cleaning costs in the budget are not just for cleaning, it's consumables, etc., and maintenance. So, but look, I can come back to you with a number of toilets we have.
Because it doesn't seem too. 32,000 seems reasonable for the large number of public toilets we have, and given that there's consumables there as well, doesn't it?
I think if I recall, you'll find that cleaning reports is probably the physical cleaning. It's not so much the consumables and maintenance and vandalism and power. That's over top of that.
Shall we go up to page 17? 18? 19? Should we be having some comments on variances in there? And like the other reports have a comment about why they're over or under?
Only if they're permanent. No, we're saying they're not.
Okay, only if they're permanent. Right. 19, 20. Councillor Cameron.
Back to the old chestnut of the animal control. We're paying page 20. Sorry, I'm a bit slow. Animal control loan repayments 8,800, and then the 128,000 for the planning. What's that for? What are we paying a loan on for?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the loan for animal control is the pound, which I think cost about half a million.
Yeah.
So we're still paying that back.
Okay.
And planning is the last, a loan was taken out to fund the last review of the district plan. I think it was about 1.8 million, and there's still $1 million to go.
Thank you.
21. 22.
Excuse me.
John.
Back on page 21.
21.
Animal control We've got actual income for the year to date is 422, forecast for the whole year is 460. Why are we in advance there?
Through you, Mr Mayor, it's because of the registration is paid at the beginning of the financial year, so it looks really good at the start and then it tapers off.
$22. 23. 24, the balance sheet. 25. John Flown, councillor.
Yeah, just coming back to the balance sheet on page 25. I have asked for the previous balance sheet of the previous year, is that 30th of June, to be included. My understanding that will be on the next one.
Great note. Again, page 25. Just a question there, probably to Paul. There's two loans you've got coming up on the 15th of May 21, both at high interest rates, and they'll be re-borrowed, no doubt, at low interest rates. Has that 4% been factored into the long-term plan?
That's your Mr Mayor, yes it has. Sorry.
Thank you. 26. 27. 28. No questions there. That takes us to the end of the open part of the meeting. Someone like to move that, thank you Mick, someone like to move that we move into committee. Councillor Cameron.
I'll second.
Councillor McMillan. All in favour please say aye. Aye. Carried.